Welcome to Mudville, podcast about baseball and cinema. I'm Brody Staub.
I'm Nolan Rabine.
We hope you enjoy.
I came home the other night and it was pretty dark and we didn't have any of the lights on, so I didn't know that you were A, home, and B, watching YouTube loudly. And as I was approaching the door to exit, I hear a loud noise, and for a split second, I thought that our upstairs neighbor was Mike Francesa.
Yeah, that checks. I love Mike Francesa unapologetically. He is. I was gonna say guilty pleasure. I don't feel guilty. I just love him.
I'd feel kind of guilty, to
Nope,
be honest.
I don't.
Okay.
He's the best.
Interesting.
He is the sports pope for a reason. The man is just he's an icon.
He did give a great supporting performance in Uncut Gems.
He did. He definitely did. He also the video that I was watching, I think, because it's the only one I've watched like in the last couple of days. But he was talking about so now he answers emails, I think, because he probably has taken so much shit answering phone calls that he just has people write into the show so they can be screened first. And the question was, it's like, settle a debate, Mike. Me and my boys would discuss in the stadiums in the city. You know, we were split half and half between which is better, New York
I love
Yankees
how they're always Italian,
or
but
New
keep
York
going.
Mets. Oh, this is also an email, so I'm just assuming.
Yeah, no, of course.
And Mike,
as one does.
Mike goes, he's like, yeah, I don't like the new stadium. I don't like the new Yankee Stadium. I was a huge proponent of them building it. I get it. I know why they had to do it. I said that they should do it. But I don't like the stadium. I don't like it. I don't like it. And the Mets, what they did, they built a ballpark. They built a ballpark. It's like, yeah, that's the good stuff.
It's just like no substance.
It's so good
whatsoever.
No, but it's so good.
Maybe
it's so
some
good. Is the best
truth to it, but like kind of the less truth, the
That's why
better.
you
Like
tune in.
I'm not tuning into Mike Francesa expecting facts.
Look. The facts that you get are that the Mets built a ballpark.
Yes, they did build a ballpark.
And, you know, the Yankees, I don't like the vibe in the new stadium. That's a fact. The fact is that Mike Francesa doesn't like the new Yankee Stadium.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, hey, it
Fun
is
stuff.
by the time that the nice folks tune into this episode, it will be Wednesday, April 19th.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some pretty hot weather this week, but it was colder today, wasn't
Oh my God,
it?
it was freezing. Today and yesterday, actually. I just walked home and it was like, oh my God. I wore a leather jacket that's like I usually wear in the winter. And before I left, I was like not going to wear it because I was like, this is going to be too heavy. And then on the walk home, it was fucking freezing. So worked out.
Oh, man. I had a night this week where I went out to see the new Ari Aster film, Beau is Afraid, with a very good friend of ours, Seamus, who we will certainly have on
Shouts.
this podcast at
Absolutely.
some point. It's ridiculous that he hasn't been on yet
I know.
to
Talk to him forever, Mr.
tell the
Beck.
truth. Well, yeah, you
Seamus,
know, it
come
had,
through.
Yeah, Seamus, come through, man. It had been a little while since I had seen him, so I went out for a drink before the movie. I left work and the movie started like 2 hours later, so
Right.
I went straight there. And I got there a little bit early, so I started, drinking as one does at a bar
Smart.
alone. And it got to the point where right before we were about
Wait,
to
wait.
leave for
What
the
were you
movie,
drinking?
Moscow Mules. Yeah.
call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love in Moscow.
And so, like, right before we're about to leave for the theater, I hadn't been on my phone for a little bit, and I check it, and I see that the Yankees are losing 7-0 in the first inning.
Yeah, I actually have a pretty good story about that one, too.
Oh, man.
But yeah, that was a rough...
Yeah, that was just a set it and forget it game for me because I saw that, I knew, okay, this is over.
Yep.
I went into the movie, and
You were right.
I didn't. So do you want to
Well,
you
real
wanna talk
quick,
about
I
that a
was
little?
I was at dinner actually with my girlfriend and her brother, and I had the game on my phone, and my phone was at like 10%. This has been a trend for me recently.
Your phone has been dead a lot this
I gotta
week.
stop that. But I was at dinner. I was at like 10, 11%. I was like, you know what, the Yankee game is starting. I'll just watch the beginning of it, and then maybe like usually, we probably weren't gonna be staying out too long at the place we were. So I was like, I'll just start watching the game. It'll die. We'll go back to my girlfriend. I'll finish the game. Watching it. Won't miss too much. And then the game started. I wish it had already died. I'm telling you.
I wish it didn't.
Now, you didn't see it because you checked the score. And
Yeah,
saw
I mean,
it.
I watched the MLB recap of their inning, and I watched all the how it happened.
Let me tell you, watching it live was one of the most excruciating. It was just like, make it stop. Just make it stop. It was like, it wasn't funny. It was kind of for a second, and then it wasn't, because everybody hit. I've never seen 1 through 9. Edouard Julien had his first 2 hits in 1 inning.
Yeah. Yep.
So
in the first inning.
It was in the first inning.
Yeah.
I was just watching it, just saying over and over again, just make it stop. And then when I was on my way out of the restaurant, actually, eventually, my phone had already died. Gracefully.
Thank God.
Thank
mercy kill.
Mercifully was the word I was looking for.
Look at the flowers birdie's phone.
Yeah, literally. So on the way out, they had the game on at the bar in the restaurant, but it was like at an angle that I couldn't see from the table. But when we were walking out, there was a table who was watching the game, and Rizzo hit his first homer of the night to finally get the Yankees on the board. And I heard them cheer, and I looked up and I saw Rizzo starting to run. I was like, finally! And they look up and they go, yeah, finally, damn straight. And then it was just like, oh my God! They were actually at the next game the next night. Those people, because they said that they were going up to the next night. And they were like, this better not happen tomorrow. And I was like, well, I don't know, man. And then it was worse the next day, actually. But yeah.
A friend of mine invited me to the game after that one. I couldn't end up going because I had some work conflict. But
that was a good one, wasn't it? That was
I mean, it just made me think. It was highly possible that I could have been at that game, and if I was, that would have ruined.
Oh,
my
you mean
night.
Game 2 of the series?
Yeah. I went to. I almost went to Game 2.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah. So I'm in 1 night away, but
Man. Yeah, that was
any night I could be there.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Oh,
so it's just like, hey, if I was there, I would have been gone.
Yeah, man.
Oh my God.
Some other Yankee housekeeping, maybe real quick, just because we're on the subject, and then we can actually use it to kind of springboard into the other things. So Stanton is hurt, Rodon is hurt again, and Josh Donaldson is coming back.
0 for 3.
All bad.
Yeah.
all
just bad vibes. I mean,
Clark Schmidt is ass.
He is bad.
Johnny Brito pitches tomorrow again, so we'll see how that goes. So
Jesus.
Put a pin in that for now.
Yeah. It's April.
Yeah.
That's what we got for the Yankees.
Also, Garrett Cole might be the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah, so, that's also true.
Not all bad. That's kind of fun. But anyway, the other thing I was going to say is Oswald Peraza got the call. We don't think he's going to be here for long. However, he is here right now, so we can talk about it.
He is. Oswald Peraza, I mean, what do you think about him?
I think he can hit. I found it interesting that tonight they played him at second, and that, I mean, I think they've been clear. Volpe is a shortstop, so that's not going to change, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah, no, I'm into that.
So glad they didn't just push him over to
something.
second for the night. Yeah, like stand for something, Yankees. But who are you, Bagel Bites? I think it's kind of fun. I think Peraza, if they actually let him get any run, I think he could be a welcome addition. Although I will say the Yankees right now are extremely weird. They're very young and very old with one megastar. That's it.
It is a little interesting. I think that Stanton's injury could potentially open them up to a lineup where Peraza slots in at second.
Yep.
Glaber DHs
yeah.
and LeMahieu
Third.
or maybe Donaldson and he comes back.
Well,
third.
They would probably platoon the DH with Donaldson and DJ, or excuse me, not
Franchi.
DJ. No, that too.
Yeah.
Well, no, Franchi's gonna have to play the outfield with.
Between
Glaber and DJ, one of them is probably going to be DHing every day. The other one's going to be either playing second or third. Donaldson's probably going to rest a lot because he's coming off the IL. And Boone actually just said in an interview he's going to want to do like a soft launch back.
Sure.
And then, Franchi, I feel like they've kind of, the Yankees didn't play yesterday, but it does feel like we haven't seen him in a couple days. I don't know. But either way, he's having a weird little magic run. But yeah, weird vibes right now in the Yankee world.
Peraza got the call. It was amongst a slew of call-ups this week. Edouard Julien, like we mentioned.
Unfortunately mentioned, yes.
He played his first game, drew a walk, then in that second game got his first home run in the same inning.
Yeah,
Hasn't hit too well since then. but we'll give him a pass since he's a rookie that was facing Garrett Cole. And
afterwards, yeah. I
Yeah.
was going to say he handled Johnny Brito pretty well, but
So I think, Julian, super excited there.
the
Vaughn,
French walking mat. What did you call him?
I called him the French Minister of Walks.
That's right.
Vaughn Grissom, Grisham, don't know the pronunciation
I think
there.
it's Grisham, but fuck that.
Yeah, I don't know. He was called up to replace the injured Orlando
these-
Arcia.
Toes. These thumbs.
We're referring to the Padres broadcast booth.
They just cut to the booth shot, and they were very thumb-like men.
Grissom called up, started the year at AAA to a lot of people's surprise, including mine. I thought he was a lock for that role. Matt Olson just hit an absolute
That's a nuke.
Oh, man, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
As a dual owner there.
Dude, Sean Murphy and Matt Olson must just look at each other every day
And just say,
be
thank God.
Dude, someone's looking out for us because holy shit, this is so much better.
God is on our side.
Wow.
There's
Man.
somebody.
Yep.
God or the devil.
God or the devil is, what's his name? AA Anthopoulos.
Alex, yeah.
The devil.
He's
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Zach Neto got called. I was shocked by that.
Yeah, me too.
Very aggressive. As aggressive as call-ups get for the Los Angeles Angels.
Is that the one I shouted to you from the bathroom? I think it was.
No.
Wasn't it?
No, Julian was the one you shouted.
I think it was Neto because Neto was the first pick last year, wasn't he? Or first round pick last year?
Oh, yeah. It might have.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was the one. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're very correct.
'Cause I was
shouted
like,
to me,
dude.
Zach Neto. And I was like, what?
Yeah. I'm like, he's on the roster.
Oh, man. Yes.
They're calling him up.
For
Yeah.
people who don't know, Zach Neto was the Angels' first-round pick last year. He went 13th overall. He was immediately considered one of the best picks in the 2022 draft.
Yep.
And the shortstop position was wide open for him. The Angels even sent down David Fletcher, which is kind of brutal. And
He had a good year, too.
Well, I
last
mean,
year.
he's
He had a good year last year. What? That's,
Zach
you know,
Neto. He has the job
he could
now.
start on about 17 or more, possibly by a little bit, baseball teams right now.
I would divide that number by like 5, but yeah,
don't know
he's
about
okay.
that.
I mean, he's not much of a hitter. He can get singles. I'm not here to talk about David Fletcher.
Dude,
I'm here to
this
talk
is
about
the Fletcher
Zach
pod.
the Fletch cast.
The Fletch cast.
Brian Bayo made
People
his
want Fletch content.
made his season debut against those same Los Angeles Angels, and he got tagged.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ohtani had to get his start cut short because of a rain delay. But the Angels did take that game.
Pussies thrown back out there. Boo.
The Mets
did
called
right
up Brett Beatty, their top
Yeah, that's fun.
prospect at third base. He's coming up, making immediate starts at third.
Now-
another guy in that Grissom conversation of a lot of people were
Yeah.
very surprised he didn't just start the season in the bigs to begin with.
So that's actually what I was about to say. What is today's date, sir?
It is April 18th.
And about how many weeks into the season? is
Actually, it
until
is
you...
10 minutes ago. It is April 19th.
Fair enough. But the service time cutoff for the year, I believe, ends up like kind of rounding out to around now. Is that right?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it's like a couple days past. Like I think you need I think a full season is like 172 days or something.
Yeah.
And if they're called up now, it's like 165. So
Right. Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it works. Like
I just remember when
I know there are a
Volpe, like
few
they were talking about
conditional
Volpe and
things now.
the conversation of basically that I can remember from right before they announced he was going to be on the roster was like, well, what's the difference? Like some people who were like kind of anti or like basically more indifferent about the whole thing were like, what's the difference between March 31st and like April 15th or whatever? Like so, I think it was like around now.
sure.
Which is what
Yeah.
I'm basing that off of. But yeah, so this is like the time where you're going to see a lot of these guys. Maybe that it might have been around when Julian then maybe got called up. That would make sense. But,
Yeah. And then the last
Yeah.
prospect call up to discuss tomorrow, Athletics Mason Miller making his debut. Guy throws 102, potentially the next Spencer Strider, they're thinking, if there is a Spencer Strider this year.
no, the next Spencer Strider is not going to be a guy pitching for the A's.
Wait until you see Mason Miller.
Because
we're going to watch
one
his
reason,
start tomorrow, okay?
One reason.
You and I are going to tune in tomorrow.
Okay. That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be at like 9:40 because it's an A's game.
I'm not going to be here.
Okay.
But I will be at a bar, so maybe they'll have it on. But they won't have it on.
I mean, who's going to have the A's game on?
The reason I say that the next Spencer Strider is not going to be playing for the Oakland A's is because I think part of the reason why you get a guy like Strider who's able to maintain his ability is because there are stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ball players need stakes. Otherwise, they get bored and bad. So
I don't think that applies to guys making their big league debuts or
give it a couple weeks.
Maybe. We'll see.
Give it a couple
Mason
weeks
Miller.
of playing as an A in front of 2,500 people. He was playing more competitive baseball in AAA. So we'll see.
Oh, that's sad to think about.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, what else was in the news? Oh, man, they announced this Museum of the Moving Image event, a night with SNY director John DeMarzico, who did an incredible interview a few months back that I listened to on the Extended Clip podcast. And he is going to be talking with a crowd, two of whom will be us, about baseball and its relationship to cinema, which is exactly what our podcast is.
So Nolan texts me the flyer today and just says, we're going.
Yeah, I mean,
and I was like, dude, yeah, let's definitely do it. And he goes, I already bought tickets.
Yeah, no, I bought tickets before he even responded. Like, I think we're legally required to attend that event.
I think you're right.
So we will certainly talk about that on the podcast.
We're at least artistically required.
Another thing that happened today is Brody and I made a huge trade in fantasy baseball.
We did. Tell the people.
Made a blockbuster dynasty acquisition of one Marcus Lynn Betts.
Who?
Mookie.
Oh.
Freaking Betts.
Yeah.
And I traded the package of the blooming ace George Kirby, the breakout candidate Riley Green, the aforementioned Edouard Julien, former numero uno catcher Henry Davis.
Went to my rival high school, fun fact.
That's wild.
That's not why I wanted him.
Yeah,
but
we'll. I think that's a good thing to clarify.
Yeah.
And also the Cardinals stud pitching prospect Cooper Jerpy.
Yes, sir.
And a conditional draft pick where it is probably a 2025 third, but if I win the title, it becomes a 2024 second. So
are you cold? Yeah.
Relatively.
Well, if you're feeling cold now, that's kind of surprising because you kind of got fleeced this morning.
Oh, I don't think so. No. Listen,
I think
our
it's a
listeners
fair trade,
can tune in on that one because I think it is quite the fair deal. I am in a position where
we were both happy with it.
I can risk it for the biscuit. I already have 2 biscuits. I won the last 2 titles.
Yeah.
And third would be a three-peat.
The carbs will kill you.
My team is in a place where I am certainly competing for a title, and Mr. Betts is an incredible acquisition for my team.
Yes, sir.
You guys...
We are very young, so we realize we're probably not going to be competing this year. And by
I think you should... Yeah, you and your brother Morgan.
Yes, he did make an appearance on the Mudville pod once before.
He'll be back.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more. But
definitely.
Yeah, I like the dynasty. I don't think... people generally like to hear about other people's fantasy leagues too much, so we don't spend a ton of time on it.
But I'm weird.
That's fair. But just that, I think it's interesting, and the dynasty league is it feels the most like the closest to being like an actual GM, way more than the show because it actually has to play out over the real baseball season. So it's kind of fun. And I feel like Mookie is at an age, and I know 30 is not really like old at all, considering I'm 25 and I cannot, I don't want to say that it's old. But yeah, I think he's of an age where we don't really have too much use for him because we are a very young team. We're not competing right now anyway. And a la the Nationals, we could send them out for a fucking haul,
Yes.
and we're going to be happy about it. So
I would push back
Yeah.
a little on the fact that on the assertion that you guys are not competing right now. I think you are, and I think you have a decent squad.
No,
and
it's
I
not
think,
bad. It's just that we have real talent now.
Sure.
like,
Yes,
on the way.
absolutely.
So that's kind of what we're banking on.
Absolutely.
But yes.
I think this trade is going to solidify you guys as contenders for the next honestly, for the next 10 years.
Hopefully,
Speaking of which,
if the sun doesn't kill us first.
fantasy baseball, we've got an incredible episode planned for you guys. I had a great conversation with two of my favorite minds in the fantasy world, Nick Chalmers of Prospect Sauce and
wish I was
Upper
here.
Beck
Yeah.
from the Dynasty Dugout.
Sorry, I missed it, boys.
Yeah, Brody wasn't here for that, but we're going to cut over just about now. Brody's listening alongside you.
Yeah,
So
it'll be
without further ado, here's that conversation.
See you next week.
Okay, welcome back to Mudville. We have a couple of very special guests today. We've got some fantasy baseball content, and we are talking points leagues, and we have got Prospect Sauce and Upper Beck joining the podcast today. Two of my favorite fresh voices in the fantasy community, specifically because these two write points leagues content. Now, I'm a guy who has done fantasy baseball for quite a long time, and for a while it was just, me and my friends doing our thing. And then around 2021 or so, I started reaching out more and immersing myself into the fantasy baseball community. And I realized that there are all these writers and all these fun and great people out there who share this passion and who write about this professionally. And it's been so much fun over these past few years, falling further in love with fantasy baseball because of this. But one thing that has always frustrated me about the industry is that rotisserie leagues and category leagues seem to take so much precedence over points in terms of a lot of the top names, like the content that they will put out. I've had moments where I've been in like other discords or like other groups, and I've reached out to people where I've seen like, they've published like top whatever rankings, and then they did something for OBP. Could this be like a little bit closer to what your points league content would be? Because this might like favor walk rates or something, which is kind of like the main thing that I look for when I'm doing points leagues. And like I've straight up had people just tell me like, no, I don't do points leagues content. And I think that that's kind of frustrating because I've been also developing the theory for a while that points might even be the ideal format. Last year, Nick, I started doing a couple of leagues with you, and I think that you were able to verbalize that and put that into so many words and sort of define these abstract ideas that I had for a while. And then just this week back, I followed you just in the last off season when I think when you started to gain some more traction in the community, and I noticed that you're working with Chris Clegg over at Dynasty Dugout, and I think that it's so cool that he's got you on there like doing specifically points leagues content, because like that it immediately puts that into the upper echelon of like my favorite fantasy content out there. It's like you guys and Imaginary Brick Wall, because like those are the ones who really take this seriously. The reason that I'm giving such a long-winded introduction here is that I wanted to say that I really appreciate what you guys are doing for the fantasy community and how I think we're going to be able to push this forward and make people start to realize that points leagues are more legitimate than I think people have seen them in the past. So, Beck, we'll start with you. First of all, thank you for being here, but also do you want to tell us a little bit about your place is becoming in the fantasy community?
Yeah, I mean, first, thanks for having me here. This is super fun. It was, as I was saying before we started recording, very serendipitous that you reached out. I was just starting an article titled "The Case for Points Leagues" to talk about, exactly what you were laying out there, which is there is a lot of validity to playing in points leagues. And the content that's out there predominantly in the space is all rotisserie focused. And I think that's a shame. I think that there are a lot of benefits to playing in points leagues, and I'm looking forward to diving into that. And thank you for all the kind words.
Oh, absolutely. And Nick over at Prospect Sauce, thank you as well for being here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your personal journey in fantasy baseball and how you sort of started to come to this position that I think we all agree upon and feel like we're sort of the collective minority here in the fantasy world? So do you want to give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, as well as Beck. This is a real treat. I love talking points leagues. I'm a huge advocate for them. I was kind of in the same boat as you, Nolan, for a lot of years. Like, I found myself digesting kind of like the mainstream fantasy content on Twitter and elsewhere, and like almost doing my own like points league translations. Like, okay, this guy has a walk rate like below 8%. I'm gonna ding him. Or, oh, this guy's a pitcher, seems to have some good durability. I'm gonna bump him up a little bit in my prospect rankings. And it was like, all right, I'm doing like this like translation for for like all of these prospect ranks, and there isn't really any kind of focused content on points league specifically. And I don't really view like myself as having a place in the community. You can follow me at Prospect Sauce. I kind of just tweet when I want. I don't like Beck is the one pushing out amazing content. Go follow him. I kind of do what I want as I like kind of see things, as I kind of like am kind of just like seeing things happen and noticing some changes, because I think that when it comes to prospects and prospecting, you need to be able to like react super quickly and digest a ton of information very quickly. And I think when there isn't specific points league content, that becomes all the more difficult because you're adding yet another layer into that. So I think that when it comes to prospects specifically, it's really helpful to have more content tailored to points league, so that you can, across the fantasy industry, that you can just kind of like react even quicker, because things change all the time really fast, and you need to kind of be able to pounce.
Absolutely. Zach, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the article that you've got coming out soon, The Case for Points Leagues, which we laughed about because that was the same title that I was going to give this episode, but I'm going to retitle it. You said that, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, it's so good that we connected on this and that we're able to all be here together to talk about this collective cause that I think we all really want to grow. So without spoiling too much of your article, do you want to tell us a little bit what your thought process is behind it?
Yeah. It's funny. I do think that the three of us are very much on the same wavelength there. With the article, I really relate to what Mr. Sauce was saying about kind of needing like a Rosetta Stone to go from these rotisserie rankings to points. But even on a broader scale, why should you consider playing in a points league versus a rotisserie league? I think the default option on almost every site out there is going to be rotisserie. So giving folks who are coming over and who are confused by that format a bit of a starter kit into how do I think about playing in points leagues? Why might I choose that? And I think that there are a handful of reasons. One that doesn't get discussed a whole lot is that the fantasy baseball community is growing really quickly. A lot of those folks are coming over from fantasy football, and there's no rotisserie scoring format for fantasy football that I'm aware of. It's all points, and it's all related to ways that the player is helping in one way or another their team win the game. And I think that's how you should build a points league for baseball too. It's very intuitive. Anybody can do it. It's simple. That doesn't mean that it's easy, right? There can be a lot of nuance, but it's more approachable. I think that's one of the bigger draws. I was on vacation last week, and that's pretty much the only time that I read anything other than Twitter.
Sure.
And I decided to jump into, I read Moneyball on the beach, and I was reading some Keith Law and some Bill James, and I was having this thought: if you play rotisserie scoring or category scoring, and it's not an OPS league, which are pretty rare, any kind of extra base hit that's not a home run doesn't matter. on base percentage and batting average don't account for extra base hits in any way. And those are, I mean, obviously they're valuable, but how do you account for that in categories? You can't really.
Sure.
And I think that's like a pretty prime example of how you can tune a points league to account for the positive contributions and the negative contributions that any given player has on their team's chance to win.
Sure. Like what you're talking about, singles being as valuable as triples. Like if there's no RBIs or anything, it strikes me that a guy like Luis Arias would become infinitely more valuable in that format. And like it's no secret that, of course, rotisserie leagues will find certain players ranked much, much higher than our leagues will find them. I think the best example that I can think of that was that sort of 3-year stretch when everybody was drafting Adalberto Mondesi in rounds like 3 or 4.
Yep.
And I was just not doing that. Like I was chilling on the patio with a tall glass of lemonade. I had nothing to do with Adalberto Mondesi during those years. And like it strikes me also that like with some of the newer rule changes, like steals are going to be up a lot, and a guy like Jorge Mateo could steal like 80 bases this year. I think he's on pace for something insane like that, like 85, 90. And with the improved plate skills, like if he's able to keep that up even to an extent, and a guy like that steals 75, 80 bases, he's probably going in like round 2, like early round 2 in some Roto Cats leagues. And I just like that's the kind of thing that I just wouldn't be able to do. Like I would not be able to see myself drafting Jorge Mateo or like Esteury Ruiz or somebody like that high without feeling like existential about it.
I want to preface what I'm about to say that I'm not buying what Jorge Mateo has been doing over the first weeks of the season. But it's a funny name you pull out because it was the first one I thought of too, but also because I started a Dynasty Points League for members of the Dynasty Dugout.
I'm so mad I didn't get in on that, but continue.
There will be more openings next year. We kind of slapped it together at the last minute.
Oh, great.
It's a 14-team league. It's something that I want to really build out and kind of use as a playground, one, for good Twitter content, but two, to kind of perfect my point scoring recommendations. Like, what should your settings be in terms of point scoring? But Jorge Mateo is currently a top 10 player in the format. So he's just he's just raking in general. But I take your point. It's the mile straw of it all, where that's not a player I'm ever touching in a points format, but in rotisserie, the value of those stolen bases is really big.
Yeah, I feel similarly on the other side of the ball for relievers, like saves leagues. Like if you have a category for saves and you don't have anything for holds, like that gives so much value to a guy like Hader. He would have so much value in that league. He'd be like a top 2nd, 3rd round pick. But a guy like Andres Munoz, who has similarly filthy stuff but is not really in a closer's role, like his value would be nothing in a league where he's not getting saves. Like, am I wrong? Because I'm not like a huge roto player in general, but like it strikes me that could be a huge flaw.
I definitely I feel that way. You're making me think of like 2016 Andrew Miller, who just he would come on and pitch in the 6th inning or the 7th inning, the most critical moment, those really high leverage moments, and was obviously the best reliever in baseball that year. I wasn't playing rotisserie scoring at the time, but that would frustrate the hell out of me to roster the best fireman in the game, but not be rewarded for him pitching in the most critical situations.
Yeah, of course. Moving on a little bit from that, like there are some statistics that I think are much preferable in points leagues. Like walk to strikeout rate, I think, is like the big one. Guys like Vinny Pasquantino in our leagues are going to be through the roof. Like I know, Nick, you first, me later. After I caught your wave there, we're buying him like everywhere. but you are like the ultimate guru of what stats to look for and like how to approach points leagues and how to best exploit the settings of your league. So like what goes into your mind when you're like approaching that league and when you're taking a look at what are the settings here, like what are the scoring rules and how can I best utilize this to my advantage?
Yeah. When it comes to points leagues, as you said, usually it's walk minus strikeout rate. It's why like guys like Vinny P, as you said, Jordan, Alex Bregman, Mookie Betts, Jose Ramirez, even though they both steal a ton of bases and are super valuable in Roto, unbelievably valuable in points leagues because you're not getting like, especially if your settings have a negative point value associated with strikeouts, you're just not incurring those over the course of the season at the same rate. So yeah, I mean that to me kind of replaces like the average or OBP component of a Roto league. Instead, in points leagues, you're kind of looking at like walk minus strikeout, and ideally you want to get that ratio as close to 1 as possible. And to be totally honest with you, like there are players with absolutely like terrible plate discipline who like who are just like fringe average major league hitters, like kind of like an Adolis Garcia comes to mind, who is just like so dinged in a points format, but in a Roto league is super valuable because he can go like 30-30 with good counting stats. So it's kind of tough because like Adolis Garcia is an incredible player in real life, partially because he's like a near Gold Glove center fielder, but at the same time he doesn't have a lot of like the traditional statistical markers that sabermetricians like in Moneyball, like Beck mentioned, that you would kind of value, and teams and organizations in Major League Baseball are valuing these days. So there's like that kind of like give and take between it, where a lot of the times points leagues, at least until this season, like this season with all the rule changes, with stolen bases increasing, with kind of like small ball play starting to take hold throughout Major League Baseball, at least until this season, it really has been for the past few years where points leagues have been more aligned with how major league teams are like valuing players. Now I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about that, but it's kind of like an interesting thing I've been thinking about.
Beck, you go first. What were you thinking?
I agree with everything you had to say. The thing I think we're kind of beating around here that I think it's okay to say explicitly is with a reliever or with a batter who's going to strike out a lot, those negative plays matter in points leagues, and they matter less in Roto. So let me explain myself. If you have a reliever come on in a save opportunity and blow that save in Roto, the way that you're dinged is in your ratios, and that you have ostensibly lost an opportunity at a save. In points leagues, those that punish you for a blown save and earn runs and so on and so forth, that hurts a lot more. Good appearances really matter, and limiting bad appearances also really matters, and I think it matters less in rotisserie formats. And it's the same thing with the strikeout and walk rate that we were talking about. If a batter comes up to plate and he strikes out, obviously it's a bad thing because he's not reaching base in an OBP league, but you're also punished for the strikeout in the vast majority of points formats. So I think it's okay to say explicitly volume matters in points leagues and it matters in rotisserie, but also minimizing bad appearances by your players matters a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Nick, what you were sort of saying explicitly also is like points leagues might even be closer to how players are valued in real life than rotisserie leagues. Like when rotisserie, like, we're talking about guys like Mondesi, guys like Mateo, Ruiz, the guys who steal like tons of bags. Their values are pushed up so high to the point where you value them. Like it's you're clearly taking what you are doing and how you are trying to translate those numbers into value. You're taking that to a point where it's skewing the perception of these players and creating a system where trading a great player for a good player might actually make sense and make a lot of sense. Like if your team isn't stealing any bases and you're down a few in that category, and then you steal a guy like, you trade for a guy like Nico Horner, who's stolen 9 bags already, and then he goes on a string like that and like brings you up into that category, and you like pass 2 people. That's just too complicated. Like it strikes me as that just doesn't feel like baseball to the extent that a points league that favors plate discipline and favors guys who walk and who don't really strike out as much and who hit the ball hard and who put up exit velos and launch angles, and guys like Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez are gods. Like that to me is just closer to the experience of real baseball. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead, Beck.
I was going to say I agree wholeheartely. I was just going to chime in and say that it sounds like you might be an Astros fan.
Fair enough. I'm not. I'm the furthest thing from that, but I'm a fan of their hitting development.
I agree. I mean, I want to go back to what Beck said earlier because that's like really sticking out to me. He said that a lot of people coming over from fantasy football, especially in like this like new generation of fantasy players, are used to the points format. And I think that is kind of like one of the main advantages of points leagues, besides from, you know, like the sabermetric angle of it, because I just think they're more fun. Like, I think that people love fantasy football because on a Sunday they can like check their phone like really easily and see, oh crap, I'm down by 50 points, but I have like a couple wide receivers left. Maybe I can make it up. And it's just like that dopamine hit, kind of like that instant gratification. And I think that sometimes we kind of like forget that fantasy is supposed to be first and foremost like fun, like a fun activity to do with your friends.
Absolutely.
And I just think that points leagues enable that more than any other format.
I think
I
you're
love
absolutely
that.
right.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I hadn't thought about that. There is a certain thrill. You know, I'm playing more rotisserie this year than I normally do, and there is a certain thrill that I get when I just check in on my home league, and you know I've got a 20-point deficit, and I need, you know, Tyler Malley to spin a gem for me to win that week. I'm locked into Sunday Night Baseball. I love that.
Absolutely. I had one week back in like I think it was 2017 where I was down by 5 or 6 points, and it was in the 8th inning, and I had Max Muncy and Cody Bellinger coming up for the Dodgers, and it was to the point where Muncy hit a double and got me 2 points, and it was a scenario where I needed Cody Bellinger to home run or I lost, and it was just, if it happens, I win. If it doesn't, I lose. And he went deep, and I lost my shit. And like, I know that so many people can say like the strategy is weakened by that, or it's like it shouldn't be about head-to-head matchups, or like it's a seasonal game, and it is. But I think that there are also ways now that are being continuously developed that are using standings where it's like you face a matchup and then you also face the entire league, where like the top half earns a win, and then of course the winner of each given matchup also earns a win. Going off of that, I think that for so long people have seen points leagues as flawed because of certain standards that I think weaken the argument that we are trying to make, and which is what we have been trying to fix kind of for so long. Like when I took over as commissioner of my league in 2021, I started to tweak the settings a little bit, and I'm still doing that. I feel like I'm kind of eternally trying to figure out the perfect system to value pitchers and hitters equally, because like one of the main complaints that a lot of people, including myself, have had with ESPN leagues is that pitchers are just so valuable. Like I had a guy this was like 2015 or so back when we were using different settings where like stolen bases were 1 point and you lost a full point for a strikeout and there were no quality starts, yada yada. You know, we've gone back and fixed so much of this, but like back in those days, we had a guy who drafted 7 consecutive pitchers to start the draft, and he ended up winning the league. So, like that, in that case, like I can totally understand how you might see, okay, my options are only drafting pitchers or doing a league like Roto where it's more balanced. Like in that case, I think it makes a lot of sense why people might sort of flock to those leagues. But I think the point that we're trying to make is that there is a way, and a very easy way, for us to make our leagues more compatible with how the sport actually works and how the sport actually feels. And it's all about that experience, like you guys were saying. Oh man, I just perfected that while I was giving this speech. I was upgrading my Zoom account so that the meeting wouldn't end, and I just pulled it off with like a minute left. So I wanted to clarify that.
Hey,
yeah,
that was very impressive.
That was some ninja shit right there. Oh my god. But yeah, and so I wanted to give a rundown of our league settings, or of what I'm at right now in this process of kind of eternally trying to find the perfect, most balanced scoring setting. And Beck, I would love to hear how your leagues work and like how you feel like I could potentially tweak this. Nick, I know you already know it because we're in a bunch of leagues together, but our league settings are total bases 1 point, walks 1 point, minus half a point for a strikeout, 2 points for a steal, 1 point for an RBI, and 1 point for a run scored. For pitchers, 3 points for an inning pitched. You lose 1 for a hit, 2 for an earned run, 1 for a walk or a hit by pitch. We don't do win-losses. You get 5 for a quality start, 5 for a save, and 3 for a hold. And I also looked at the standings page, or the player ranking page so far for this season, how that's working. We currently have 9 pitchers in our top 20, so 11 hitters, and we have 16 pitchers in the top 40. So I think that that's pretty balanced. Pulling up the list right now, I know that it is led by Garrett Cole, Luis Castillo, and Pablo Lopez, and then the top hitter on the list is Ronald Acuna, which seems to me like a very solid indicator of who the most valuable players have been. Yeah, okay, we got the list here. So it's those 4: Matt Chapman, Julio Urias, Shane McClanahan, Pete Alonso, Rafael Devers, Framber Valdez, Brian Reynolds, Cedric Mullins, Wander Franco. Jorge Mateo is 14, as he should be. Jeffrey Springs is 15. Matt Olson,
R.I.P.
Randy Arozarena, Jacob deGrom, Kevin Gossman, and Francisco Lindor. So I honestly like those results. But Beck, when you hear that, what do you think, and what settings do you use, and how do you think I could maybe adjust mine a little?
Yeah, while you were saying your settings, all I was thinking was, this sounds a lot like the scoring settings we set up for the Dynasty Dugout Points League. And then you read off all the names, and I was like, are these the exact same settings? Because, pretty much all the names that you read there are top 20 players in our league. I think we were missing Randy Arozarena. We also have Sonny Gray pretty high on this list. He's 9th overall. But just to give you an idea, the top 5 or so are Garrett Cole, Ronald Acuna Jr., who I think is going to win another MVP, or win an MVP this year. Pablo Lopez, Luis Castillo, and Matt Chapman. So we're aligned pretty well.
Yeah.
I like the removal of the wins and losses. I think we've known for like 20 years now that pitcher wins and losses don't mean anything. A pitcher's performance only accounts for half of what that the likelihood that his team is going to win. Less than that if you consider that they're throwing 5 or 6 innings, and even less than that when you consider the value of defense. So pitcher wins and losses, I think removing that removes a level of variability that folks worry about when they play in point scoring formats. One of the things that I've been kicking around is I want to find a way to incorporate defense somehow that's not strictly
I would love that.
A negative for errors. I think we also know that errors don't really tell you a whole lot.
Yes.
A great shortstop might get an error on a play that an average shortstop, he doesn't even get to that ball. And the other problem with incorporating errors is that with the universal DH, you're kind of giving a really small bump to guys that are never playing the field because they're never going to be penalized for being the worst defender on their team. So that's one I haven't figured out, but it's something I'm thinking about.
Yordan Alvarez would always be the number one player in a league like that.
Yeah, I mean, Yordan Alvarez, I think there's a case in leagues where the Ohtani rule is not in effect and you have individual Ohtanis hitting and pitching. I think there's a decent argument for Yordan Alvarez to be the number one player in Dynasty. But that's besides the point. I just wanted to get a take off there.
I'm kind of with you on it.
Same.
Okay, so I'm not so far out on a limb. The second thing I'm thinking about is, we were talking earlier about how do you evaluate players for points leagues. I think K- walk rate is a great one. The other one that I've been trying to do as I put together my dynasty ranks is I've been paying attention to WOBA. I've been paying attention to WRC Plus. WRC Plus is park and league adjusted, which is nice, but WOBA looks a lot more like an OBP, so that might be friendlier. And I don't mean to totally nerd out here, but when you look at the coefficients in WOBA, a home run is not actually worth 4 times what a single is worth. It's actually closer to 3. So how do we align the actual value of a home run or a triple or a double with the expected run value that those things bring? Now, I don't know that that's entirely necessary.
Oh man,
I think
you're blowing my mind with that.
I think the 4-3-2-1 is intuitive and easy to use, but when we talk about having the freedom to reflect the product on the field as closely as possible with points leagues, that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about too, is how do I more closely align the scoring in my leagues with the way that front offices and baseball executives are thinking about the value of players.
Sure.
Have you guys played AutoNew?
Yes.
Nolan, you played AutoNew, right?
I played it with you. Yeah, we were in the same league together, but we didn't really like it. One, I wasn't particularly a fan of the interface. It just kind of felt like a spreadsheet to me. And I also was not a fan of the fact, I think this was league specific, but maybe not, who knows, that the league that we drafted only allowed us to start 2 pitchers per day. So if we had our 3 best pitchers all going on the same day, we're just tough luck, you can't start one. And I didn't know that, and I saw that it was a points league that went pitcher heavy. So I went super pitcher heavy during the draft. I had Burns, Woodruff, Gallen, Severy. This was 2021. I just had so many pitchers on my team for that year, and then 5 of them started opening day, and I could only use 2. And my team was really bad. And I also didn't like the fact that if your starting pitcher had relief eligibility and you put him into a relief spot, you don't get the points if he starts the game. I don't like that at all.
True.
I think that's strange.
So I bring it up because I also quit the league because I didn't like the intense off-season management, but I brought it up because what Beck said about WOBA. So don't quote me. I know I'm saying this on a podcast, but don't quote me 100%. But I'm almost entirely certain that their points settings align to the coefficients in WRC plus in the formula. So they're directly kind of utilizing that advanced metric to inform their points league settings, which is pretty cool. And I also actually, I know you hated it, Nolan, because I know you love pitchers, and it's a bias of mine too. I get it. I love watching my guys pitch, but I think that limiting the number of pitchers in a day does kind of offset the like inherent bias toward pitchers in points leagues. So I didn't like Auto New because of like how crazy the off-season stuff was. Like it's kind of like almost like an auction format, which just kind of got a little too complicated for me. But they're doing a lot of really cool things to kind of push points leagues into like the 21st century and like make it even more like sabermetrically inclined than your average points league, which I thought was really cool.
I am totally into that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sure there were dozens of Ottoneu players yelling at me while I was saying that. Like, this exists already. Sometimes you just got to say it out loud, and then someone will be, point you in the right direction.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, Beck, go join an Ottoneu league. I mean, you try it out for yourself if you haven't already.
Yeah, I have not played Ottoneu. One thing, now you've kind of got me rolling downhill is when you think about like baseball executives having to put a dollar value on players, you can simulate that experience with a salary league too. So I think that the point you made at the top of the podcast about wanting to, or making the case for points leagues being more aligned with actual player values and their contributions to the product on the field, we're not even scratching the surface of how realistic of a baseball sim you could get if you wanted to.
Hell yeah, I love that. I remember I did a league. I think it was Yahoo even, which is like the worst platform ever. Like I don't ever want to sound like I'm defending Yahoo or saying you should ever do a league on Yahoo, but I saw that their like default settings, it was like something wild, like 10.4 for a home run and like 2.9 for a single. And at the time I was looking at that, I was just being like, what the hell? Like this is just gibberish. But now maybe I'm thinking that could have been something that was more based on that like WOBA value. Maybe they were 10 steps ahead of me. Maybe I was too hard on Yahoo.
I played a Yahoo. Yeah, I played a Yahoo redraft with my buddies last summer, and we used the default settings. And I'll say this: it did not feel like an intelligent choice in scoring format. So all for giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's the case, but it was kind of a banana land experience with those settings.
Our Yahoo experience was actually so awful that what happened was we had our league on ESPN for a while, 2012 through 2019, and then we didn't do the league in 2020 for obvious reasons, RIP. And then 2021, we were going to renew the league on ESPN, but we saw that since we didn't do it in 2020, it was gone. We couldn't do it. And then we decided we would try Yahoo because we were doing football on Yahoo, and we liked how it looked, and like I thought it was gonna bring like better changes or whatever. And we ended up hating it so much that I transferred everyone's players and everyone's settings into a new created ESPN league by like week 2, and we just like went with the flow and like just did whatever had to happen to whatever was lost in translation between moving the league from Yahoo to ESPN, which was mainly just like Ohtani was the hardest thing to do. But yeah, the long-winded point, Yahoo sucks. I'm never going to do a league on Yahoo again, I don't think. One more point that I wanted to bring up is I was talking earlier about the top 40 players in our league with some of these tweaked scoring settings, and I realized, maybe that's a little too small of a sample size, and some people might have been saying, what is it over a full season? So I also found that, and I went back to what our league looked like last year in 2022. I was a little bit surprised to find that there were 13 pitchers in the top 20. That's a little bit more than I was expecting. However, there were 20 in the top 40, 30 in the top 60, so exactly half on both of those numbers, which is kind of fun. 35 of the top 80 and 39 of the top 100. So that sort of 50 through 100 range was very pitcher heavy. But towards the very top, and I'm going to pull up this too so I can give the exact names. Towards the very, very top, it might have still been a little bit too pitcher heavy, which led me to think, also, I think maybe we might allow a few too many starts, because in our league last year we allowed 15 starts. This year we bumped it down to 14, but this is a 14-team league, so like that leaves a lot of starts, and I have certainly noticed that there's a pretty wide discrepancy between the hitters that are available on the wire and the lack of pitchers, because really like every serviceable starter is going to be rostered in our league. And you know, we have hitters like Will Myers, for example, who is unowned right now, and I do think that is a little bit of a flaw. So I'm considering maybe like we should use sorry, I got distracted because I thought Ken Waldachuk gave up a grand slam, but he did not. Anyway, so I think maybe we could make a few more changes to try to make pitchers and hitters equal in value, just in terms of roster size, not necessarily scoring, because I do think that's two sides of the same coin there. Like if you want to have guys, you want to have the top hitters drafted alongside the top pitchers and so on and so forth. Those are two things that you have to master. So I'm kind of curious, Beck, with some of your leagues, like how do you work with start limits, like to make sure people aren't just spamming starters, or like I said, drafting 7 in a row on your way to a championship?
Yeah. So when we started the Dynasty Dugout Points League, I actually we're hosting it on Fantrax. I prefer Fantrax's UI, and they have a lot of right. There's a lot of options for customization, and what I did with the guy who is the commissioner of the league is we actually spent like 3-4 hours tinkering with scoring settings, and then looking back through the 2022 season, the 2021 season, to see how historical results would have shaken out. And I think like I like to promote managers having more flexibility than less. So I don't necessarily like imposing start limits. I like to try and mitigate that with ensuring that a bad start by a pitcher is really punished like a bad start. If someone blows up on the mound in real life, and their team is down 5 or 6 runs by the time they leave the game, that is a really bad outcome, and I think your fantasy team should be punished at the same time. So if people want to roll the dice on like last week, somebody probably rolled the dice on Wade Miley against the Padres, and he spins a shutout, or I think it was 7 shutout innings. Nobody saw that coming. Somebody, took a stab at it, and they should be rewarded for doing that. If it had gone poorly, rostering and starting those fringe arms to try and grab an advantage should be a risky thing to do.
Yeah, like in our league last night, I started Kyle Mueller, and he got just destroyed, and I kind of thought to myself, that shouldn't be a guy that I should have to be starting. I kind of did this to myself. Moving forward from there, that is just about the last note that I had. So I wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions before I let you go off on your way, and I think we all probably want to watch Blake Snell versus Spencer Strider. But before you guys go, Nick, I'll start with you, and then Beck will go to you right after. Are there any preseason takes that you guys are excited about in terms of how they're playing out, or are you regretful of, thinking maybe I shouldn't have said that? And also, are there any under-the-radar prospects that you guys are especially high on to open the new year? So, Nick, we'll go with you first.
Well, Mr. Nolan, I was really like head over heels with Clark Schmidt this preseason.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I actually made quite an interesting trade that kind of ties in a breakout prospect with a regret. I traded none other than Miguel Blaze, who is just an incredible five-tool looking center fielder for the Red Sox. Like out of this world bat speed, kind of has like the Acuna starter pack. And I traded him straight up for Clark Schmidt because I just really believed in the stuff. I really believed in the Yankees to like kind of develop his arsenal and refine it so he could get lefties out. And so far, that's not looking too good for me, Nolan. So I think you may have a top 10 prospect on your hand, and I may have a guy that I'm going to drop in a couple weeks.
Well, I would certainly need it. My team in that league, which I inherited, by the way, for all you listeners out there, is in the toilet right now. So I need all the top prospects that I can get in that league. But I also previously in the offseason had traded my only share of Miguel Blaze for Ahmed Rosario, and then packaged Ahmed Rosario and Brandon Pfaadt for Xander Bogaerts. So that's looking pretty good so far. I'm happy with that one. But like I said, my second question, are there any young prospects that are off to a super hot start to open up this year? Any top risers other than Mason Miller, who just got the call today, that you think, hey, I'm super high on this guy?
I want to give a shout out. Honestly, I want to give a shout out to Mazzucato. This is maybe a little bit of recency bias, but he just twirled like a 6-inning shutout with 13 strikeouts in low A tonight. And the arsenal looks really good. So this kid, Frank Mazzucato, he's a 19-year-old lefty pitcher out of the Royals organization. He was drafted really high, actually. He was drafted like top 10, I want to say, maybe 7th overall in 2021. He kind of comes from my neck of the woods. He's a New England kid. He like dominated high school baseball in New England. He threw like 6 straight no-hitters in Connecticut high school ball, which is pretty insane. Kind of took himself from a fringe draft prospect to literally a top 10 pick over the course of a spring season, which I think is super dope. But I just kind of have the sense that the new regime in Kansas City may have an idea how to develop pitchers. It's been really rough lately with like Brad Keller and Bubich now getting hurt, and they kind of ruined Daniel Lynch, who was kind of an exciting young arm. But I have a little bit of faith that the new regime is going to develop Frank Mazzucato, and I'm really excited. I get like Max Fried vibes with him. He's just like a lefty who hides the ball really well. It's not like that sexy 3/4 Nicoladolo type deal that we all love, but he like really hides the ball well. He complements it with a really disgusting hammer curve and a really nice slider that he can jam into to righties. And yeah, I think that Mazzucato could really fly up the rankings. He's super polished, but also has some like deceptively nasty stuff. Kind of one of my favorite guys. But again, a little bit of recency bias. He literally just threw that 13K shutout like an hour ago.
God, you said the name Daniel Lynch, and it always makes me think the only time that I ever started him in my life was a spot start early in 2021, which I really should not have made because he was going up against a very right-handed White Sox lineup, and he gave up 8 runs in the first inning and got me negative 27 points. So.
I did literally the exact same thing, and I remember where I was when that game happened.
Oh my God, yeah. I remember looking at it like I was like in the shower looking at my phone, and I was like, cause like I was like already down that week, and like that was the start that just made me be like, oh no, okay, I'm in the tank. And that was week 5, and I was 2-2. I don't know how I remember that so well, but and I remember, and it pushed me to 2-3, and I was just beside myself that I had fallen below 500, and that I would make such a stupid start. But hey, I won the title that year. I bounced back. So
Hey, there you go.
Beck, I wanted to ask you the same two questions. Are there any preseason takes that you're feeling particularly strong about in either direction, and are there any flags you'd like to plant on some young, lesser-known prospects?
Yeah. I'll give you one of each. Two preseason names I was pretty hot on. We'll go with the stinker so far. It's been Alek Manoah. I love Manoah for that kind of like bulldog mentality. He just gets going downhill, and it's so fun to watch, and he brings so much intensity. And I don't know what happened this year. The velo's down, the command's all over the place. He's looked really, really not good. Has me questioning if maybe there's an injury going on. So that's, I invested him in a couple of places that he's not living up to the draft capital at this point. So that one stings. It stings doubly so in points leagues when you invest in pitching and it doesn't hit. The other one, and I want to like a heat check on this one from the two of you, is I have been beating the drum for Luis Arraez in points leagues for a very long time. I think he is a top 100 dynasty player, back in top 100, but top 100 nonetheless in most points formats. And I don't think the gap between him and like Ozzy Albies right now is very large. At least it's the smallest that gap has been in a very long time. And that's going pretty well. Coming into play tonight, Arraez is hitting 455 with a 508 OBP. In Fantrax standard, that puts him at 99th overall, which is, he's not hitting for a ton of power. I don't think anybody is surprised by that, but he is inside the top 100 so far this year on a very torrid start.
No, I totally agree. He controls the strike zone in a way that few guys do in baseball, and usually the guys who control the strike zone like him are elite type hitters. I feel like maybe this is like super optimistic, but I've had this thought recently. Like, it almost kind of feels like early career Jose Ramirez, maybe without the speed a little bit, where it's just a guy who has this like double plus hit tool, elite recognition, doesn't strike out, controls the strike zone, gets the barrel to everything, and like he's just maybe it's going to be tough. The Marlins, they don't really have a great history of developing hitters. It's a tough ballpark. But, like, maybe he's just, like, a swing adjustment away from pulling some more fly balls and hitting some over the fence. So I kind of like that call, man. I agree with you. I like Arraez a lot.
I've heard the Jose Ramirez thing before. It is – their early careers are super similar. I live in Minnesota, so I watch a ton of Twins baseball. I was a season ticket holder in 2021. And I don't know if that swing can change. I hope that makes sense. He just doesn't get anything behind it. He'll get a hold of one every once in a while. I would love if he became Jose Ramirez. I don't see it in the same way, that we saw the early signs for J-Ram. But I love the optimism.
It's like a 95th percentile.
Yeah, right.
Something that made me think of was the story of Ichiro, how he would just crank home runs in batting practice just effortlessly, and then of course the games would start and he's Ichiro, he's the greatest contact hitter of all time. And it made me think maybe Luis Arraez is out in Miami just before the game just cranking dingers. Like, maybe he's got that hidden power that we don't know about that just never translates to games. Who knows?
Yeah. He could be just a beast in the cage, and we wouldn't know.
He could be. I think I would probably agree with you that he would be like a back-end 100 guy for fantasy. I might be a little compelled to put him more in like the 125 range, just because, like you said, he's ranked, I think you said 99th on the year, and he's got a 455 average. So that feels like peak player to me. So like, I don't know, it seems to me like he should be higher than that. But that also could just be like a total early season thing. Like, so many guys have have scored points that will fall off or whatever. But I do ultimately agree with you, I think.
I will go on the record as saying that I don't think 455 is sustainable. But, the other thing I'll say is that was a take that I was getting off in a lot of places preseason. I did not anticipate kind of the fun ball coming back to the degree that it has this year. I was really thinking about the 2022 run environment where the ball wasn't flying off the bat in quite the same way as it was, the kind of 3 or 4 years prior. And it's super fun to have that ball back. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I might be the high man on Arise, and that's a comfortable spot for me.
As it should be. He's having an incredible start to the season. Both of those two teams from that trade should be thrilled with their new players, Pablo Lopez, Luis Arias. Total win-win trade so far. I think that'll just about do it. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you both so much for coming on and having it. I have been wanting to talk about this for so long. I think all three of us are going to keep beating that points league drum like as hard as we can, and then hopefully we can help try to grow this into a viable fantasy community, and we can try to make it so that points leagues are as respected as Roto and categories, and everybody will be happy, and yay. So thank you very much. But before we sign off, I'll let you guys plug whatever you need to plug. Beck, where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter at upper_Beck. I could not get the original Upper Beck handle, so there's an underscore in there. And all of my written work and ranks live on the Dynasty Dugout. It's the Substack run by Chris Clegg. I handle all the points league stuff over there. If you Google Dynasty Dugout, it's probably the best way to find it. It'll be the second link as of right now. It's like an aluminum bat company that ranks first on SEO, so I'll have to talk to Chris about that.
Nick, how about you?
Yeah, follow me at Prospect Sauce for saucy little nuggets on prospects, if that's your thing. I tweet decent amount, especially now that we have minor league baseball back, so you never know what you're going to find over there. I don't have any written content or anything like that. Kind of do it as I want. Sometimes I have little bursts of energy where I feel like writing some stuff down, but most of the time it's just little tweets of information. So go give me a follow. Prospect Sauce.
You're a great follow. I do have to ask before we jump off, your profile picture on Twitter, what is the story behind that?
That's a secret. I can't divulge it.
Very mysterious. All right, love it.
Everybody go on Twitter right now. Go at Prospect Sauce and take a look at Nick's secretive photo, and also give him a follow. So follow Prospect Sauce. Follow upper_Beck. You can follow our podcast at Mudville Pod, and you can follow me at Stuck in the Coil, just like Frank Reynolds. Thank you guys so much. This was an amazing conversation, and I would love to have you both back on later in the year to see how some of these opinions have aged and see if we can maybe get a nice Dynasty Points League started up for 2024. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks, Nolan.
Take it easy, guys. Take it easy.
Take care.
Brody and Nolan tapping back in for just a quick note. If you enjoyed that conversation and you are unfamiliar with our podcast, that makes sense because we're brand new. This is just episode 6. We started it last month.
We're just
we
youngins.
we hope you will
Just
get
getting our
in
legs.
onto the ground floor. You will follow us over at Mudville Pod. Please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is you listen to podcasts. It really helps, and it'll help us attract more fun listeners.
Did you take that straight out of the YouTuber script?
Yes.
It really helps us out.
It's so helpful.
The thing is, it sucks because,
Yeah.
YouTubers have it down, I guess.
Algorithm.
Algorithm.
It's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. But
yeah.
hey, anyway, this has been Mudville, a podcast about baseball and cinema. Thank you so much to our guests for this week. We will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
See you guys next week.